Thank you so much for joining us for ARM ESG Webinar Series. We are very delighted to have you. Thank you so much. Today's session will focus on navigating ESG, charting the course toward a sustainable future. And the topic has been carefully selected to give us insights into ESG principles, what ESG means to businesses. In today's world, ESG is gaining momentum. So we'd like to know what ESG is all about. What are the principles around ESG and how is ESG supporting businesses? To do justice to the topic, we have two speakers. We have Mr. Alausa Adewi, who is the head of governance and sustainability at ARM Asset and Resource Management Holding Company. And also, I have here Mr. Abbas Agbaje. The problem, Mr. Abbas would look generally in terms of ESG, what it means, what are the drivers of ESG, and also what are the benefits associated with sound ESG practice. Mr. Adewi will give us insight into ARM ESG journey, how it started, the situation currently, what are the pros and cons. These are the things we'll be doing in the next 1 hour and 30 minutes or so. Once again, thank you so much for joining us this webinar series. I'll quickly tell us more about our speakers for today's session. Mr. Alausa Adewi is a seasoned legal practitioner with over 29 years of experience. With out of this 29, 25 hands-on experience in financial services, providing legal advisory, legal and compliance risk management, governance advisory, custodial services, brand administration, and people management. He is a corporate and investment banker and has managed the legal aspects of a wide array of short-term credit facilities, both in local and foreign currencies. He started his career with the law firm of Olawoyin and Olawoyin, where after that he moved to the United Bank for Africa, then to Intercontinental Bank, Brooklyn Discount House, and FBN Quest Marshall Bank before joining ARM Holding Company Limited. Mr. Adewi has led legal teams in the acquisition and mergers of banks, led the corporate services group of a discount house, including supervision of human resource management, supported a company from 100 million seed capital to $1 billion valuation, and has also helped mid-sized companies without any major loss in the last 15 years. He has also successfully engaged at the highest level of governance and corporate leadership. Mr. Adewi holds a first degree in law from the Obafemi Awolowo University and a Bachelor of Law from the Nigerian Law School, and also LLM from the University of London. He is an alumni of the Lagos Business School a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Secretariats and Administrators, United Kingdom and Nigeria, a member of the Sustainability Professionals Institute of Nigeria, and also a member of the Chartered Institute of Directors and Economic Club. Please, let's give an equal Mr. Adamu Adewoye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our second speaker is Mr. Abbas Agbaje, who is an ESG and impact professional with over 14 years of experience supporting the integration of environmental and social lens in investment advisory and operations for multi-million-dollar projects in sub-Saharan Africa. He holds a bachelor's degree in botany first class from the University of Lagos, an MSc in Sustainable Environmental Management from the University of Greenwich, UK, and Executive MBA from Quantic School of Business and Technology. He is the Managing Director, Managing Consultant at Impact Press Consulting, and an Environmental and Social Safeguards and Compliance Consultant with the African Development Bank. Previously, he worked as the Vice President, ESG and Social Impact at Pyramid Capital, ESG Manager at InfraCredit, and a Director or Senior ESG Consultant at EBS Advisory, now EY. He has led ESG projects for partners like AFDB, World Bank Group, BRI, DEG, InfraCredit, AFC, and others. Abbas is a GRI certified sustainability professional with deep knowledge of sustainability standards and extensive ESG reporting experience. He regularly facilitates ESG capacity sessions at Lagos Business School and the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, CIBN, and speaks at industry events. He holds professional affiliations with AIMA UK, IAIA, and the Nigerian Environmental Society. Abbas is also a Commonwealth scholar and the technical anchor for the Special Task Force on Climate Change Action and Implementation at the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. Please, let's give a round of applause for Mr. Abbas Agbaje. Mr. Agbaje, thank you. So delighted to have you as one of our speakers for today's session. We want to take a presentation from Mr. Agbaje to look at the overview of ESG in Nigeria and also the global best practice, as well as how ESG is linked with business, sustainability, and the likes. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Agbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Atanda. Good morning. It's afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from across the different time zones of the world. Thank you so much to the ARM Oldco for organizing this important webinar, which will, improve a lot of people's understanding about ESG. And I'm pleased to join you to facilitate this session. And thank you to Mr. Lausa, for driving ESG in an important business such as the ARM Oldco, because with businesses such as ARM Holdco driving ESG adoption within the Nigerian market, it signals a lot to the market and will influence a lot of positive engagement in Nigeria and beyond. So, to our respected listeners and participants in today's webinar, I'll be taking you through a very short journey on navigating ESG, charting the course toward a sustainable future. Today, this is a snapshot of what we will cover. An introduction to sustainable finance. Then we will go on to review ESG principles, then talk about ESG as a driver of business resilience, innovation, and stakeholder trust across industries. Then we will take a very quick look at some of the ways we can unlock long-term value through ESG integration. And then we will open up the floor for conversation. So let's begin. So the term sustainable finance, it's a combination of two words. There's the finance, then there is sustainable. Now, sustainable, comes from the term sustainability. And the whole essence of having this concept of sustainable finance came about as a result of the concern that a lot of investment, a lot of businesses that drive flow of capital have been observed to contribute to a lot of negative externalities in terms of the environment and the society. Now, the rethinking of the model with which we do businesses and operate necessitate the coinage of the term sustainable finance, which means we're looking at the distinction between this statutory traditional financing approach and compared to a sustainable approach that ensures that environmental, social, and governance considerations are embedded in investment analysis, in business strategies, in portfolio management, and all forms of decisions that we take at different level of businesses, including in public sector, where government play a key role. So in simple terms, when you hear sustainable finance, when you hear ESG, they are used interchangeably. So sustainable finance refers to the process of taking environmental and social and governance considerations into account when making investment decisions. And the whole reason is for us to secure long-term, impact. And this long-term impact can be both financial and non-financial. So we'll go ahead and see a lot more example as to why we actually need this sustainable finance and why it is not just a fad, it is something that has come to revolutionize how we conduct businesses. So one of the reasons why we need sustainable finance, is clear from the demonstration of the level of progress we have achieved with respect to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals were goals that were set to capture some of the ambitions of global leaders around what constitute element of long-term sustainability of our planet, for people, and of course for businesses. Now, amongst the issues that are pertinent are climate change. Even locally here in Nigeria, a whole lot of us are aware of the challenges we've had in terms of, extreme weather-related climate hazards. For example, flood. Recently, we all remember and we pray that these people that were affected by the heavy flood in Makwa, Niger State, get restored. You see, a lot of lives were lost, properties damaged, businesses disrupted, just because of this extreme, climate, related hazard. And this is one of the reasons why world leaders continue to seek to mobilize financing to direct businesses, companies, all forms of businesses, even government, to operate in a manner that does not continue to exacerbate the challenges we have in terms of climate change. Of course, some people will argue that climate change is a natural phenomenon. Correct, it is. However, it is a natural phenomenon that has a cyclical pattern, and it is a slow and gradual process that could take several millions, even to billions of years before these cycles, change. However, due to anthropogenic activities, human activities of pumping a lot of CO2 and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, the warming of the atmosphere, such that temperature is rising. Because temperature is rising, it has led to a lot of ripple effect in terms of changing climate, weather pattern. It has led to melting of the glaciers. It has led to a whole lot of detrimental environmental impact affecting people. And of course, when it affects people, it definitely will affect businesses. And this is why this problem is an important one. We see other ones in terms of, life below water, our oceans being polluted, is a critical one, because a lot of people rely on the resources from the ocean, which we often term as the blue economy. And when we degrade oceans, we are limiting the capacity of these people to meet their own livelihoods, and which is why it's important. So you have, the shipping and the maritime industries are particularly, responsible for ensuring that oceans are not polluted, because even oceans serve as critical sink for CO2. And therefore, when oceans are not sustainably managed, then the reservoir of carbon that is within the ocean environment is released back into the atmosphere, which will continue to contribute to our challenges of climate change. And this is why within the blue economy, ecosystem, you have what you call the Poseidon principle, which is a principle that has been, established to ensure that, the Poseidon principle is from, that name Poseidon is from the Greek mythology, the Poseidon that has this, sort of metal shaped fork with which it fights war. And the whole essence is to bring attention of global leaders to, catalyzing, or mobilizing capital towards sustainable, blue economies. Now, differently from, ocean, we also have, forest, terrestrial ecosystems that are also impacted a whole lot around deforestation. A sizable amount of Nigeria's, primary forest has been depleted, leaving us with, derived savanna, secondary forest, Sahel savanna, and the likes. Now, this has implication on food security. This has implication on availability of resources, to power our food, fast consumer moving goods, ecosystem. And this is why there is a lot of conversations around how can we raise finance that ensures that we protect these natural resources. Beyond just the environment, we also have social issues. We have issues around gender equality, where it is important to now rethink our model of, limiting the ability of women or other marginalized and vulnerable group of people to also contribute to the productivity of a nation. And this is important because some of us may be aware of what we call the 2X global. It was previously the 2X challenge. And when you remember that in biology, the term X stands for female chromosome. So you have XX for female chromosome, XY for male chromosome. And therefore, when you hear 2X, it's referring to women. And this is all in a bid to ensure that women can be considered and will not have any structural or systemic barrier towards realizing their own potentials. So companies are now being examined as to the level of their gender diversity, equity, and inclusion using the 2X criteria of are women considered in terms of ownership of the company? Are women, particularly supported in terms of entrepreneurial opportunities? What about in terms of employment? If you say you have employed women, in what roles, in what capacity? Are women part of the managerial cadre? Are you designing products, services that directly solve problems that affect women predominantly? So all of these are areas where sustainable finance is pushing the frontier away from the traditional approach to seeing a more prosperous, shared, prosperity for everyone, leaving no one behind, irrespective of their gender. So you have issues around energy access. A whole lot of people don't even now. So we have categories of people we call unserved people, people who don't even have access at all. I remember sometimes last year I was in one community in the north, and one man said that in his 50 years of existence, he had not seen any grid electricity. Now, this is not to say that the government is not, making some effort towards this regard. This is a global phenomenon across different countries, different regions of the world, and which is why you have this as part of the SDGs. And what government is doing now is to now support, proliferation of renewables energy, because some of these communities are far flung, in rural areas, such that infrastructure development has not yet got there. But with distributed renewable energy access, you can provide sufficient power to them. And this is why you have the likes of Rural Electrification Agency is working so hard to ensure that we provide renewable energy access to people in underserved and unserved communities. You will see that this is a problem across Africa when you look at this map. Similarly, you have issues of housing. Nigeria's housing deficit is estimated to be in the around 18 to 20 million of deficit. So this is a global phenomenon, not just in Nigeria. It's everywhere, and this is important. That's why sustainable finance, is now looking to address a lot of these gaps. Other issues are in terms of security, child labor, forced labor. In fact, a recent ILO report, provided a snapshot of issues around forced labor and child labor across different countries in Africa, including Nigeria. The whole concept is to see that we can build our human capital, because the kids that you put into labor today that are not properly schooled or educated will turn out to become the menace of the society later on. When we talk about crimes, insecurity, it is partly because certain people have been neglected. So when we talk about sustainable finance, it is meant to direct all these issues, fix issues of forced labor, child labor, so that companies can be responsible in their supply chain and influence best practice. Other issues are also in terms of when there will be development. A lot of people are either physically or economically displaced. For example, if there's going to be a road construction, businesses can be asked to move. People can lose their houses. Children will get their schools disrupted. A whole lot will happen. How are we going to take care of these people so that the so-called project that is meant to bring development will not lead to a lot of retrogression for some other people while some people are profiting from it? So it's a call to fairness and equity. Economic issues, even though Nigeria's employment is said to be around 4 to 5%, unemployment is said to be around 4 to 5%, across Africa, you have a lot of unemployment. But it is not just to provide employment to people, it's to provide jobs that can allow them meet their living, have a living condition, comparable to something that allows them to achieve longevity in terms of their life. Because many people work today, but they work in very strenuous situations that expose them to a lot of risk and hazard, and they are not even paid equitably. So decent work and economic growth are connected, because when you provide jobs to people, it's also critical to ensure that these jobs are not just jobs for the sake of it. People can actually meet their needs on the basis of the job. You have issues around infrastructure, building of infrastructure, responsible consumption and production, and the like. So all of these issues makes it important for us to have sustainable finance. And it is in the light of this that we see that when we talk about sustainable finance, SDG, ESG, and the likes, it's been for over a few decades that this conversation has started. And a lot of international institutions have led this conversation. And as you see from this timeline, it was what led to, because businesses' investment play a critical role when it comes to influencing behavior and paradigm shift. So it became necessary to now make sure that investors, businesses play a very strong role in driving the sustainability agenda across the world. And, this is why you now have, the existence of the establishment of the United Nations, supported principles for responsible investment. You have the Equator Principles, the SDGs, the UN Global Compact, and so many other international principles, standards, and framework. But you will see from this timeline there has been, some progression in terms of how globally leaders are aligned in pushing the sustainability agenda, ensuring that finance are directed towards, sustainable projects, sustainable businesses that caters to the overall well-being of everyone, while also ensuring that business, can stay resilient in the face of shocks and stress. So the conversation around ESG, which, is often the short form of environment, social, and governance, actually started with this book, this report, Who Cares Wins, a report that was compiled by the UN, a team led by James Gifford, around 2004, 2005. And the whole essence, if there is anything you're going to pick, from this webinar, and I'm sure Mr. Lausa will touch on this when he talks about ARM Holdco's ESG journey, is the fact that it is who cares wins. In our local, conversational parlance, we often say people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So this is the same. The whole essence of sustainability, sustainable finance, ESG, is to show that people care, businesses care, and we will see what it means for businesses to care, what it means for government to care, what it means for leaders to care, what it means for employees to care, because everyone has to care. Everyone has responsibility to take in driving ESG adoption and best practices in our respective domains. So this is an important report. You should look out and just read, the report. So when we talk about ESG, it's important to clarify that all companies do not have the same context. Industries and sectors are different in terms of their exposure to the risk that could come from environmental, social, and governance issues. Different businesses also have different level of capabilities and resources to tap into in order to optimize opportunities that are associated with ESG. And this is why for certain companies, you will see that a whole lot that affect them or that are associated with their operations or their footprint is related to the environmental side. Now, this is not to say others are not important, but there is the concept of materiality, right? And also the concept of proportionality that allows you to dedicate resources, time, attention, and focus to issues that are more pertinent, that could have serious financial and non-financial implications for your own organization. And this is why in some cases, some companies will face huge environmental concerns or can take advantage in terms of, a lot of opportunities of the environment. And this is why you will see that this first one is showing that the focus for some companies may likely be environmental issues, whereas social and governance are still important, but these may not feature so, high on their list of priorities, but they are not also to be taken to the background because they are important. Now, in some other instances, you have the case that it's the social component that is a lot more, pertinent to the context of a business. And in this case, companies need to pay attention to also the environmental and governance, because when we talk about sustainability or ESG, there are certain concepts that are important. One is the whole idea of systems thinking. knowing that all systems are connected to one another. This internectedness and interconnectedness of this system means that an impact in one area could extend to impact in other areas. And this is important for us to know. For example, a few years back, we learned of the story of a community that decided, to protest against a company that has been polluting their environment because they do not treat the effluent from their environment, from their operations, and discharge into the natural environment. A whole lot of noise. Their trucks, destroys the road. So people have faced a lot of serious impact from the operations of this business. And one day, people could not have it. The communities could not have it any longer, and they decided to protest. They shut down the gate of this company, and they did not allow workers that were inside to go, the new ones that were supposed to take over the shift, to come in. Now, this is a clear social issue, but it will have implication on the governance of the business. It has financial implications because when production stops, then revenue also is affected. And this is why it's important to pay attention to this issue. In some other instances, you have the governance will be what should be mainstreamed even more, depending on the context. And this is why when we're taking any journey, within the ESG landscape, the goal is to first start with an audit of the system. You do a gap analysis to understand the context of the business, and then, from that, you're able to determine which issues should get priority, and you then develop a roadmap for achieving this. So this is just to give you a snapshot of, key ESG principles and frameworks and standards. So we have the 6 principles for responsible investment. These, applies to asset owners, asset managers, investors, and the UNPRI has published a whole number of resources and free report that are publicly available that you can, take advantage of if you want to learn more about how you can integrate, ESG considerations in investment analysis, investment decisions, investment management, and so on. And this is principles for responsible investment that help to protect environment and also ensure the well-being of people, which also, underscores that such kind of businesses will achieve long-term resilience. Now, beyond just the general investment landscape, you also have sector-specific initiatives and frameworks that have come up. So an example is principles for responsible insurance. With climate change, a whole lot of things will happen because when you look at insurance operations, it's underpinned by the understanding of risk. Risk has to do with uncertainty. Now, when climate hazards will happen, there's a lot of uncertainty with respect to climate hazard. In fact, when you read the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, whether it's the 5th assessment report or any of the report, you will see that there is a gradation in terms of confidence level of certain projections and analysis that they have made, suggesting that there is a high degree of uncertainty in the manifestation of the impact of climate change. Now, this means there's an added layer of risk for insurance businesses. So if you own assets that needs to be insured or are already insured, it is likely that the risk that you have considered proudly, is not sufficient. So the spectrum of risk will now need to include climate-related risk so that you can be rest assured that if there is any hazard, your insurance companies can take care of, of that situation. You also have principles for responsible banking. Those are 6. You have other principles such as the IFC Environmental and Social Performance Standards, which mostly apply to a lot of private sector related investment. You have beyond just the traditional businesses, you have the IFC ESG performance indicators for the capital market. So this has been designed specifically for the capital market. So if you are raising bonds, if you're issuing bonds, this is what will apply in your case. Beyond just, so when we talk about ESG, there's also a spectrum. So there is, from one end is do no harm. That's one end of the spectrum, do no harm. Then the other end of the spectrum is do good. So you are moving from one that speaks a lot about, risk aversion, risk mitigation, to another that talks about optimizing opportunities, intentionally delivering, positive environmental and social outcomes. So this other component that involves intentional focus on driving positive environmental and social outcomes is what we often refer to as impact investing. So a principle that has been also established, and a lot of signatories have adopted this, is what we call the operating principles for impact management. Those are the international ones, but also, that Nigeria, we don't, stay behind. We keep up the pace. Locally, we also have the Nigeria Sustainable Banking Principle. This has been around for over a decade now. We also have the Nigeria Sustainable Finance Principles that was established by the SEC. Then, also globally, this is just to highlight that for pensions, there's also a set of impact investing principles for pension, because it is expected that, pension, custodians have huge pool of capital that can be directed towards sustainable projects, sustainable infrastructure, sustainable businesses to catalyze sustainable development within countries. And this is why, you'll see that even locally, you have, pension funds investing in sustainable climate smart infrastructure. So why do we even bother to talk about ESG? Many people think that ESG is just all about, risk mitigation. And in fact, some have argued that in certain instances, it's just a lot of trouble. And we are with nothing to write home about. But shall we tilt to the rhetorics or examine evidence from, authoritative sources in terms of research that have been conducted on outcome of entities that have applied ESG and those that have not? So you have an example of a report by McKinsey. McKinsey conducted, a research, and in over 2,000 studies that were analyzed, in terms of, positive correlation of ESG and, financial benefit, at least 63% of those studies identify that, there's a positive correlation between ESG integration as well as, financial benefit. Now, of course, there are other, there will be outliers. There are other situations where, there are negative findings. But even in these scenarios, there may be some endogenous or other exogenous factors that may need to be analyzed to understand where things went wrong. Because when you look at the word ESG, you have 3 pillars: environment, social, and governance. Each of these pillars have multiple issues, multiple topics. And therefore, all of these need to be adequately taken care of if we must, derive benefit and value from ESG integration. So just to take us very quickly, an example of some of the benefits is, for companies who have embedded ESG in their operations, top line growth, they've experienced a lot of improvement in their revenue. Some have been able to even tap into new markets. Some have even deepened, their reach within existing markets. And of course, in some instances, you find that a lot of companies with good ESG practice have built strong community relations and also established, solid partnership with government and regulators. The flip side of this is that, when you don't take ESG seriously, you don't focus on consumers' preferences, stakeholders' concerns, then you stand to lose a whole lot because you can lose customers because of your poor sustainability practices. For example, within the renewable energy sector, there was a time when there was a lot of scrutiny, with respect to renewable energy equipment coming from certain parts of the world because of human rights abuse, modern slavery, forced labor allegations. And because of this, some of the contracts that have been signed needed to be rescinded because of this concern. So this is a case of if you miss out on embedding ESG considerations, then you could lose customer, you could lose access to a whole lot of resources as well. There's also cost reduction. There's a particular business that we engaged with a while back. Normally, they will spend 6 million naira to power their gen on a monthly basis. 6 million naira to power their gen on a monthly basis. But they realized that this powering of gen has a lot of issues: environmental pollution, noise pollution, potential soil contamination and the likes. And when there is hike in, fuel price, it immediately affects them. So they decided to switch to renewables, and it will cost them just about 140 million naira to put up the renewable energy project. They decided to go ahead. But guess what? If you do the calculation, you will notice that 6 million times 12 gives you what? 72 million in 1 year. 72 times 2 gives you 144 million in 2 years, which means that the payback time for that 140 million naira investment in renewables, right, is from the 3rd year. And look at how much they are going to really save beyond just, maintenance amount that they will set aside for maintenance, but they will save a whole lot of money from transitioning from, diesel fuel genset to a renewable energy option. And they don't have to deal with a lot of issues around, if you have to store diesel, this is the amount you have to pay. If you have to transport diesel, a whole lot of challenge with respect to that. So there's a lot in terms of cost reduction. Regulatory and legal interventions. Some companies are so smart that they were the drivers of a lot of ESG initiative within their own sector or industry. And because of that, they were part of the people who formulated, or part of the committee or task force that actually formulated some of the policies or regulations to guide ESG practice within their industry or sector. And what this does for them is that they have easy access, to regulators, and they could also benefit a lot from a lot of incentives. But of course, those that do not practice this may suffer a lot of restrictions. Then they can also incur a lot of fines and penalties if found as a culprit. Some few years back, there's a case of a particular company owned by foreigners where an 18-year-old boy got electrocuted because he touched a live wire. And there was report that the attention of the management of the company had been, drawn to that particular hazard, but they did not fix it. It took the death of an 18-year-old boy before they realized what this meant. And the government immediately had to shut down their operation, fine them heavily. You will also see another example in terms of where we take shortcuts and we don't apply best practice in terms of ESG and sustainability. You remember a particular real estate project that was going on in Ikoyi. Government had given a particular permit for a particular number of stories, but the developers had exceeded the number of stories that was approved. They did not realize that occupational health and safety is very critical. They did not realize that checking all of the parameters of the soil or the base that will carry the building is critical. And you know what happened? The building collapsed. Even the developer himself, got trapped and died as a result of this. So we can see that there's so much that we can lose when we try to do shortcut. Now, productivity uplift is another critical one. For many employers, they don't value their employees, but that's a very wrong move. So it's been found that companies that value their employees attract better talent and retain talent for a long time. I was at a company recently where we went to do due diligence, and we met some staff of the companies. Some of these staff had spent 15 years, 20 years with the company. And guess what this company does? When you have spent up to 10, 15 years, the company will give you and your wife or your family an all expense paid trip to any choice destination, in the world. And, people enjoy this. They have very strong package for their, employees, and very good work environment, taking care of them, very good grievance mechanism, and all of these, make this employee believe that this company cares. Remember what I said earlier, who cares win. So these people stayed, they built the business, they took the business as their own. They are productive. Nobody has to chase them around to do the needful because the company has shown that it cares. And this is the way that businesses derive a lot of benefit, from, caring. And you'll see there's a London Business School, case study that says that, in a Fortune 100 company rating, a whole lot of companies experienced higher, appreciation of stocks because, employees feel good about the companies. And you see, you have Glassdoor, Indeed, and so many other, online fora where employees can make comments, rate and review their management, talk about their experience working in a business. So when you're attracting a new employee, these employees will go to Indeed, go to Glassdoor and different fora, to go and see what are past employees saying about this business. What are past employees saying about the management of the company? In fact, there is a rating for CEO, MDs of companies as well, just so that they can be sure that this is the next place they want to continue their career. So imagine that you have bad comments, poor ratings, you can't attract the best of talent. Even those ones that are there will be looking for a way out as soon as they find a better option. So it's important to think around this as well. Then more importantly, if you're looking to raise finance, you cannot but take ESG seriously. And I'll just leave it at that because of time. McKinsey did other studies that show that the total shareholder return improved in a lot of cases where, there is adequate consideration of ESG within investment decisions, business strategy. So you will have a slide, I believe, so you will be able to go through in details. So finally, how do we create long-term value through ESG integration? So this has been synthesized into 5, and which has been used across different, context of businesses, whether it's locally or internationally. First, you're looking at integrating growth, profitability, and ESG into the core strategy of the business. So there's nothing like we have a strategy and we have a sustainability strategy. No, it has to be embedded, right? Your strategy cannot be a standalone strategy and not have a sustainability. Even when you have an enterprise risk framework, you should embed, your sustainability considerations into your enterprise risk framework. And for many of us that are aware of the requirement of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria in terms of the International Financial Reporting Standards Sustainability Disclosure Roadmap, it requires that as part of the process for demonstrating readiness to start reporting based on the IFRS SDS, every company that is eligible has to provide a proof that sustainability has been integrated into their enterprise risk management framework. So the second one has to do with, there's an example in terms of integrating, ESG into your core strategy. You would see that, but there's a particular company, Metals and Mining. It's one of the companies highlighted by McKinsey, which had focused the strategy on an investment on decarbonization as a way to achieve its objective. So it had coal business before, but it divested and focused on, because a lot of assets will be stranded if you don't divest at the end of the day. Capital is shifting away from this heavy fossil fuel-based business approach to low carbon development pathway. And therefore, you will not be able to attract a lot of capital, whether it's a green loan, it is two green bond, or what have you. So it's important. Now, in certain instances, some companies have decided to go the innovation route, putting their ESG thinking cap on. And you'll see an example of a European transport and logistic provider that decided that they will customize their offering to align with ESG principles. So they are focusing on helping customers to reduce their carbon footprint in their supply chain. And this has resulted, in significant gains for them, 20%, higher annual revenue growth. So again, there are ample evidence to show that ESG pays, and it means that who cares actually wins. Now, in some other instances, you have companies that thought that, oh, let's let's blend our competitive advantage, through mergers and acquisition, and this has helped accelerate their financial growth as well as long-term business, cemented their long-term business resilience. In other instances, you also see that when companies also want to merge or acquire another company, they tend to consider the ESG practice, and this can help either in charging additional premium or actually lowering the cost of capital because of the gains that will accrue from, for example, if you are going to acquire a company that has very strong, ESG practice, and the acquisition of that company will lower your own carbon footprint, because based on the Climate Change Act of 2021, companies in Nigeria, when it becomes fully enforced, will now need to report their emissions on an annual basis. If you exceed the carbon budget, then you will have to pay a carbon tax or buy credit. Now, if you acquire another company that has very good carbon footprint, it will lower your own emission ultimately, which means that that company can actually charge you additional premium, for its acquisition. And if the company is not performing well, if adding the company will increase your own portfolio carbon intensity, you could say, oh no, because you have poor carbon footprint, if we take on that, it's going to affect us. We're going to have to pay carbon tax. So let's also negotiate a lower. So cost of capital, cost of acquisition can be greatly impacted in this way as well. Once you are doing all of this, it's also important to report and communicate transparently. And this is why in Nigeria, you see, before we have Global Reporting Initiative, you have, Sustainability Accounting Standard Boards, but now you have the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure that is now defunct. But now all of these have been converged into a universal, standard, the IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Standard, which is now been adopted by the FRCN, Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. So although it is still voluntary to report at this time, it will become mandatory for all public, interest entities to start reporting on their sustainability practice, because we have the IFRS S1, which focuses on sustainability-related financial disclosure. You have the IFRS S2, which focuses on climate-related financial disclosure. You now start to report on 4 levels. 1, your governance. 2, your strategy. 3, your risk management. 4, your targets and metrics. Now you need to report how you have embedded ESG or sustainability in your organizational DNA across these 4 pillars, and report this in terms of the potential risk that could accrue from missing out on mitigating ESG risk, or some of the opportunities that you can unlock by embedding an ESG lens in your operations. And this reporting is not going to be for all SMEs or MSMEs. It's going to be mandatory to report from 2030. So you just have 5 years. So the FRCN has given a roadmap where you can start to do voluntary reporting and, build your capacity until it becomes mandatory. And, importantly, reporting is one thing, but have you actually built that organizational culture? And I think this is one of the things, Mr. Lausa will share with us during the next session. So thank you so much. I will end with a very brief case study in terms of Alibotin. Just to show you very quickly, Alibotin is, if you know Alibotin, they are in the oil and gas sector. But now, because of the shift in the global landscape in terms of sustainability focus, ESG focus, they are trying to now shift their operations to be more, ESG compliant, and what has this done for them, right? 1, they created, so innovation has happened. They created, a vehicle called Naviscale. that now uses their experience to fund clean energy and climate tech ventures. Look at a traditional oil and gas business shifting its base, just to recognize that there's a transition, there's a shift in terms of the global focus for sustainable businesses. And therefore, they now leverage their own experience. If you have ever read this book by John Conrad Murad, titled Borrowing Brilliance. So they are borrowing brilliance and experience from the oil and gas sector to now fund investment in clean energy sector. And what has this done for them? If you must care, if you care about the finance, look at what was their revenue in 2023, $23 billion. Imagine just a company earning this much revenue, just the financial year 2023. Just look at the numbers and look at what their CEO said. The power of Halliburton strategy. Now, what is the strategy about? A strategy that has ESG and sustainability embedded in it. And look at what is yielding. And these are just the financials. There are other non-financial benefits that accrue from embedding ESG and sustainability. A lot of misconception about ESG and sustainability, but I think when it is appropriately framed, when it is sincerely and transparently practiced, it builds a lot of value, whether for businesses, for government, or the society at large. Thank you so much. I would stop here now.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Abbas Agbaje. Please, let's see more E-class for Mr. Abbas. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Agbaje. Someone said brilliant presentation, Mr. Agbaje. Thank you so much. So we'll come to questions. I can see some questions from the audience. But let's hear from Mr. Alausa Agbaje in terms of ARM ESG journey. Given that ARM operates in capital markets, and when ARM started, ARM started before regulations from SEC and things. What informed, and this is my question to Mr. Alausa, what informed the ARM commitment to ESG? And please tell us more about the journey so far. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Agbaje. And please, if you can hear me and see me clearly, please let me know so that I'm sure that I'm audible. Thank you, Mr. Agbaje. You have made my job very, very easy, because you actually answered a lot of the questions that Mr. Atanda Olagunme asked me. So I think it was 2020, the COVID imbroglio was still on, and the management started thinking about the business in a new way. And I recall that the CEO then, when she mentioned to me that management was looking at ESG practice and an enhanced one, the first question that came to my mind as a lawyer and as one that is focused on profit, why do you want to give more money, more percentage to non-business related an exercise that won't bring you immediate money? And she said, Alausa, that the way management is looking at it is broken down into three. Number one is responsible investing. The second one is stakeholder engagement. And the third one is environmental stewardship. And she broke it down. So ARM has been around for like 30 years now. It's gone beyond, ARM has gone beyond just mere P&L. Let's make more money for shareholders. It is now how we are making that money. It is what are we going to be known for, and how long will we be around for. So responsible investing is sustainable investing, is one certainty that you can have, that the way we structure this business, it will outlive us. Because we are not trying to undercut people, we are not trying to take advantage of people. We are thinking about the impact of operations on the environment, not just the environment, on the people around the company, and how our operations affect the larger society around us. And so when she said that, my mind began to open up. So for ARM, it is beyond just making money, it's how we make that money and the impact of how we make that money on the environment. So ARM is big on CSR. ARM has supported schools. ARM is big on health. ARM has supported government initiatives on health, giving donations, bought materials and all that. But those are one-off. How do we sustain this? How do we ensure that the impact that we have made is sustainable? Not that we'll spend 50 or 100 million on one event and then you get there 2 years later, you discover that everything you spent has gone to waste because nobody's managing them. So, and that's what led to ARM looking at ESG differently. Now, somebody will be saying in his mind right now that even the countries that led ESG, based on their realities, they are religion. And of course, we are not, ARM did not join to just tick a box. ARM joined the ESG movement because there was a thought process around that. The thought process was that we can do better. We can impact more. We can create a legacy. People can know us for something. And that's what led. So whatever anybody is doing or whatever is happening in the world, the crucial fact for ARM is that responsible investing is the way to go. You don't just make money. You make money in a way that your entire ecosystem benefits from the money you are making. How does our operation? So we put on diesel generator like Mr. Abbas said, and your entire environment is polluted. Is that the way to do business? Is there no better way to do it? You have a site, a construction site that is going on, and the effect from that site is affecting business around you. Is there a better way to do it? The vendors that are working with you, because we've gone to that extent, if you sign a contract with ARM now, for example, there will be a clause in that agreement that will be speaking to child labor, speaking to your arrangement with your own dependencies. So if you have a supplier to that your business, how are you dealing with that supplier? So do you have terms in the contract with that supplier that speaks to SDG principles? That is how far ARM has gone, and that is because of our conviction that businesses should be responsible and sustainable. Thank you, Mr. Atonda.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Alausa, for that, for taking us through ARM's ESG journey and what the business has done regarding ESG landscape. This question is, okay, I will direct this question to Mr. Abbas Agbaje. John Okpara, one of our participants, asked that how can an organization mainstream ESG in business operations and reporting? Did you get the question?
Yes, I got it. Thank you. So one thing to start with is to say that each business needs to review its own organizational context. The interesting thing is there are some practices that we already have that are already aligned with ESG and sustainability principles. So we must recognize that. So the difference is that maybe we were not intentional, because these seem to just be normal practices. So, for example, in some instances, some companies already pay more than minimum wage, right? So this is already good. So you will see that in certain instances, you will already been doing certain things. But a good place to start is to take an internal review of where you are and understand what's your objective, like Mr. Lausa mentioned, because that intentionality is a critical one. If you start just so that you are looking to enhance your reputation, you will not really be achieving the goal. But if you have that sense of starting, that journey with a sense that you have not just short-term interest, but long-term focus, then you are likely going to achieve the intended outcome. So the common ways people start, as I noted earlier, is you review your organizational context, identify the good practices that you are doing, then identify the gaps. So this is often done by benchmarking. So I have shared a couple of principles earlier, right? So again, you may need an external consultant, or if you have someone internal to help you with this. So they help benchmark your practice against these standards. When they benchmark, the outcome of that benchmarking provides a sort of a snapshot of where you are. They will identify the commendable practices that already align with the provisions or the requirement of these standards or principles. Then they will identify areas for improvement, right? Now, when they identify these areas for improvement, then you develop an implementation plan or a roadmap. This roadmap can be designed or phased into 3: short-term, medium-term, long-term. But importantly, given that we now, have to start reporting based on the IFRS, you should start by considering these 4 pillars. At the governance level, do you have a board? What is the composition of your board? Is it gender diverse? Right? Do you have board committees? Is any of the board committees saddled with the responsibility for overseeing ESG or sustainability related matters? Right? Then, of course, the managing director or the CEO has to take responsibility, of driving ESG and sustainability within the business, because he's the intermediary between the other management, the company, as well as the board, right? Then you also have what is often advised, depending on the size of the organization. Now, this is where context is very important. What fit company A may not fit company B. Where organization is big, you may have an ESG or sustainability committee that is constituted by drawing from different functions within the business, because it is not a one-man thing. It's an organizational cultural thing. So that structure has to be there in terms of governance. Then you look at your strategy. What's your strategy looking like? That benchmarking process will identify an area where you need to enhance your strategy by embedding sustainability lens, right? You look at your risk management policies and procedures. The benchmark process will also identify areas for enhancement, and you do the same. Then, of course, what you don't measure, what you don't track, you can't determine whether you're making progress or not. This is where targets and metrics now have to happen. So you set ambitions, right? Whether on environment side, on social side, on governance side, and then choose particular metrics. You don't have to choose a complex metric. Don't overburden yourself. Remember, it's a journey, right? We often say that it's a journey that comprises 3 to 4 C's. The first C is commitment. Do you have a policy? Is a policy communicated to all and sundry within the business and external stakeholders? It may require that you have a management system in place or embed sustainability into your enterprise risk management framework, right? So commitment, then you ensure that you comply. The minimum when it comes to sustainability and ESG is that you comply with the national laws, whether it's the environmental laws or the labor laws or what have you. You have to comply with that, right? So that's compliance. So you're coming from commitment, compliance. Then when you are doing that, because it should not just be a tick the box process, then you also have to ensure that beyond just compliance, you are truly building a culture, right? Where you don't have to chase employees around. It's tied to people's KPIs. The CEO knows that he has KPIs linked to sustainability and ESG. Every employee knows that they have KPI. In some companies, what they have done is a percentage of employees' bonuses are directed towards sustainability initiatives that employees themselves lead. You can see it becomes a culture. Then beyond just culture, then you can achieve competitive advantage. The 4 levels, the 4 C's, which means it's part of your business. And because it's part of your business, the way you deliver your services, the way you design and deliver your goods, then outpaces the competition. And this is where you want to be overall in achieving your business resilience. I hope that helps in a way.
So, Mr. Atonda, if I may just jump in there, because Mr. Abbas has actually described our journey internally. Now, the CEO is the responsible officer of sustainability. CEO is not the one that will do the reporting, is not the one that will do the implementation, but is the responsible officer, because if your board, your top management, your leadership is not really convinced about ESG, that you can't be going anywhere. You just be going out in circles. Now, the CEO is the responsibility officer for ESG. When we started this journey, there was no regulation. We had to use best practice. And what Mr. Abbas described was that we got a consultant to come in and help us. Now, ARM is very strong on governance already, and so that was a plus for us. ARM was very strong on CSR, so that was a plus for us. What we need to now do is to change our mindset from just giving gifts in quotes annually and then having this good feeling that we've done something for society to how do we make this continuous and how do we embed this in our systems. So it got to a point where we now had to have the management systems in place, and that management system actually had provisions that will give people particular functions and roles under the management system. So you have internal audit, you have risk management, you even have legal department mentioned in that management systems. And what that does is that if Atonda as the ESG manager, for example, misses misses one of the roles that is supposed to, maybe within a quarter, he has a target quarter, and he misses that, internal audit picks it up and he has to explain why that was missed. He has to now explain whether it was finance, whether it was an activity that happened that was missed. So it is now embedded in the culture. You have to report every quarter on your ESG activities. You have to report at the end of the year. You have to attach it to your annual report. Now, you mentioned the Climate Action Council when you were presenting. It's interesting that if you look at that act, and that act is already operative. If you look at that act, they have a director general appointed now, but they are still trying to maybe get themselves together before they start full operations. Now, if you look at that act carefully, one of the ways they expect to make money is from penalties and fines to companies. When I saw that, I said, wow. Now, what also that is, what they've not told us yet, we don't know when they will start, but the day they start, they are going to be looking at the day that act came into force. And they are going to be asking companies that have not filed anything on ESG during the time that act came into force and when they start operations, they're going to be asking them to pay penalties, because whether they have a director that has been appointed but is not yet in operations is good. I see him go to meetings regularly, but yeah, we are not feeling them yet. The day they have enough resources to begin to track those things, that's the day they will be coming after companies. And that's when they'll be asking, let's see your annual report. Did you file anything to SEC? And they will now go back and begin to, maybe you have already incurred penalties that you don't even know yet now, until they come to your company to say you didn't file your report on climate and all that. So it's gone beyond just being a voluntary exercise to a mandatory exercise. Now, we started before SEC. And fortunately for us, what SEC asked us to provide, our ESMS is way ahead of SEC regulation. We are doing in percentages of what much more than SEC asked us to do. In ARM today, if you want to invest, so we are asset managers, if you want to invest monies of people into a particular business, there are steps you have to follow. Now, if the company you want to invest in, example for stock, they have a governance issue, you are not going to invest in that because your checklist will flag it. If you want to invest in a company, for example, where they buy business of oil spill, for example, that checklist will flag it. So the idea is you are ready, okay, to absorb temporary shortfall in profits for the longer good. Because we know that in future, in the long run, companies that have made that sacrifice will win. And so that is where ARM is at now. So we report to our quarterly, yearly, annual reports. Everything is in place right now in ARM. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Alausa Adewi, for that contribution. It still boils down to who cares win. Thank you so much. Who cares win? That's the takeaway for every one of us. Okay, it's almost, we plan to end this 1:30. If there are other questions, please, from our audience, let's ask questions. Let's ask our speakers questions or comments. Someone asked about if we'll share the slides. Sure, we'll do that. We'll circulate the slides to the participants. Mr. Abbas, To you, sir, what will be your parting word for us?
Okay, I'll just take a jibe at what I saw on the group chat to say someone asking difference between CSR and ESG. I'm sure that question came about from what Mr. Lausa described. It is to say that the concept of the CSR, came about, when, big multinationals that are in the extractive sector, do their operations, which often leave a lot of impact on the people. And it was just in response to see that, and you see that this is also even covered in the new PIA Act, just to make sure that there's a certain percentage that is dedicated of the company's, revenue that is dedicated towards community development. Now, the whole essence of the CSR is just to say, the business is trying to help the people alleviate their poverty, alleviate their suffering in a sensible way. But the difference is that while ESG is meant to unlock a lot more opportunities and reduce risk to the business, CSR can only help in just one way, which is to secure the social license, to operate for the business. But ESG, remember, there are three pillars: the environment, social, and governance. So it covers all the bases, and it is intricately embedded in the company's strategy. Unlike CSR, which can fluctuate in terms of decisions. So when the company does not make so much money, it reduces their budget, right? They don't have to do so much more, right? But when they make so much money, they can expand their budget. But when it comes to ESG, it is CSR is really not mandatory, but just to say that CSR is part of ESG. If you view it, if you view it the right way, and like I said, the parting word would be that who cares wins. So let's continue to care so that we can win. And we see when pioneers such as ARM, Oldco, had even gone ahead of SEC regulation, it means they are thinking into the future. And if you must know, there is a new field, not so new, they call it futures thinking or future studies. So I think ARM Oldco is one of the forebear of that field, looking into the future, take action to make sure that they can optimize opportunity while also mitigate all kinds of risk. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to join you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And over to you, Mr. Lausa.
Okay. I think all of us should have a change of mindset. I saw in the chat box, I just hope I'm correct, that somebody said that this session is actually focused on companies and not individuals. But that is actually wrong, because the company is run by individuals, and it's what individuals do that the company will benefit from. If you have a change of mindset and we move from considering and looking at ESG as a box-ticking exercise or another cost center, we begin to see the benefits. Now, if I use an example, your company has an expanse of land, and you as a staff were asked to go and put a fence around that property. But before you go there, there's an easement somewhere beside the edge of the land where people can actually access their homestead easily. It's just maybe 10 square meters or something, or even less. But you went there and you built a fence that actually covered that easement and went back to the office. What have you done? You've not done anything wrong, because the land belongs to the company. Okay, so what you've done is correct. However, if you have the mindset of the impact of the activities of the company on the society at large, you'll be the one saying, out of the 10 square meters, can we structure 5 as a walkway so that people can access their homestead? And that's just an example. And by the time you get there, you discover that if something is happening in that environment, it's a society, the people living in the ecosystem, that will protect the business of that company. We've seen instances where there's a riot and people try to attack a company, and the community stood and said, it is not here, because this company employs our children, This company provides water. This company has built hospital for us. This company has built a school for us. Our children, okay, when they leave school, there's percentage that they employ annually. And so that company is making money, no doubt. That company is achieving its goals, no doubt. But it is greater and better when the entire ecosystem around you begins to see you beyond P&L and begins to see you as a partner. And then that's what sustains the company and then guarantees sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful session. Mr. Abbas Agbaje, thank you so much for the insightful presentation. And Mr. Alausa, thank you for taking us through ARM's journey and what the benefits that the business deriving from ESG strategy and up to the clients, and expanding the business. Thank you so much to our audience. Thank you so much for taking time to join this webinar session. Like earlier mentioned, we'll circulate the presentation, and also we'll let you know when we'll be having our next session, because it's a series. We'll be looking at different areas of ESG, as form of to educate us and also to look at how that contributes significantly to business and also to individual, and also the role that we also need to play in ensuring that our environment is sustainable, that we do our work in a socially responsible manner. And don't forget the parting word from Mr. Agbaje, that who cares win, in our own respective businesses or in our own respective space. Let's be conscious of our environment. Let's be conscious of the social element of ESG and also the governance. So once again, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.